how's it going? How's it going? It is I, your boy TJ, and welcome again to M5 Property Addicts, where we talk about anything and everything around real estate. And today, I've got my boy again, Christian Jansen. Good morning, sir. How's it going?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks, and you, TJ.
Awesome stuff. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be talking about how do one person get funding for property investment, right? So what is a property investment? Let's dive into it first. I'm going to give my definition and Christian is going to give his definition. Let's see who's got the right answer for property investment. For me, it is the property that gives money into my pocket every month or regularly. Maybe it's a short term. And I want to see, it's a property that I go and buy because it's an investment. So if it's an investment, I want to see a return. How much money is it giving to me, right? And I know some people, they might say, hey, TJ, it's an investment. So in investment, I want to see money in 5 years' time or in 20 years' time when I finish paying the bond. That's not my explanation, right? An investment for me, it's an asset. Asset pays me money. Liability, which is the opposite of an asset. A liability takes money away from your pocket. Now, if you're buying a property investment, we say that it is an asset. But now if it's taking money from you, it's a liability, isn't it? But that's my definition for today. And I know that there's many people who prescribe to the same thinking and knowledge. But let's hear from Christian which side of the fence he falls in. Christian, what's a property investment?
Well, I share the exact sentiments that you do. First and foremost, it comes down to buying assets. The only addition that I'll add to that is it depends on the type of investment that you're undertaking. I mean, if you're going to do a capital flip, for example, that investment property will only yield something in your pocket later on. So it may cost you some money up front. But it's all about extracting value, creating value. But in the layman sense of the word, it comes down to buying something that puts money in your pocket. Whether it's that money comes into your pocket immediately or a little bit later, slightly delayed, fact of the matter is it has to give you a positive cash flow.
You have just mentioned the term capital flip. It's a new terminology that we have just mentioned here today. A lot of people are thinking already, what is a capital flip? And someone have already written the name down. Yeah, I see you. Okay, good. Well done. You are learning. So Christian, what is a capital flip?
So capital flip comes down to your capital value that you're increasing. So I buy a property. Let's say it's a nice and big stand and it's a smallish house that was built on it. And I go and I expand on that house. So renovate the interior, maybe add an additional room with an ensuite or build a garage. That increases the capital value of that property. And then the flip side is literally the flipping of the property, which will mean that I'll be selling it for a profit. Because those type of transactions tend to not yield the best rental return, but you are increasing the value, the capital value, and you are then extracting that by means of selling that property into the property market.
I've got one of my boys, basically what he does, he goes into the townships and the old townships houses, the property is a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom and it stands on its own and the toilet is outside, right? Those are the old traditional houses. And what he does is that he leaves the toilet outside, but he goes and then modifies the house so that he includes the bathroom room inside. So he brings in a toilet, he brings in a shower, and he brings in a kitchen as well. He tiles it throughout, and then he might buy these for around about 160, 180, somewhere there. He puts in an additional 100, maybe 200,000 at most. And he sells this thing for 500,000-600,000 and he makes his money. Sometimes he tells me that whilst he's still doing the renovations, he gets a seller. I mean, he gets a buyer already.
Yeah.
And that is a step-by-step guide of a capital flip. Is that correct, Christian?
That is 100% correct, yes.
Awesome stuff. But today we are not talking about capital flips. It just happens to be something that we are defining so that you know. But we want to talk about property investment. And by the way, flipping, capital flip, is a strategy. So it's one of those strategies that you can deploy. I don't like doing that. I am about creating generational wealth, creating passive income. So for me, doing flips, it's not my happy place because it's not giving me money for a long time. But it can give you money today, tomorrow. But I always ask the question, what are you getting, right? So for as long as you are working, you're getting the money, which is great. But if you stop to flip, then you got no money. And that's the only reason why I don't like it. Yeah. But today, let's jump in to talk about funding for properties, right? This is for investment properties, Christian. So we've defined what an investment is all about. And now we want to define the actual funding. Is it difficult in South Africa to get property funding for investments?
No. In a simple word, no. It does come down to your bond qualification. If it's a residential property, that is always going to factor into it. So you need to prove the affordability. We ran through all of that in one of our previous videos in terms of residential property finance. So if your repayment ability is there, then you'll get the financing. When you start moving into slightly more complex setups where you delve into the commercial financing side of things, it becomes a little bit trickier, but you can still get the financing. You might just have to put a little bit more of your own skin into the game.
Right. Are there banks out there that are in favor of property investments? Because I've always believed that banks typically are there for the purposes of managing you as a consumer. So if you're buying a property, you have to stay in it. So the question that I'm asking here is, when you're buying this property, do you have to disclose to the bank that it's for rental purposes, or would they then say, oh, no, hold on. If it's for investment purposes, then it's no longer this product as home loan. It is now this product for home loan for rental. Or you just submit and the banks don't really care for as long as you're paying them. How does that work?
So a home loan is a home loan is a home loan. So there's no distinction. One of the banks has a product where they look at future rental income, which is a little bit different. They literally call it their buy-to-let product, but that only comes in later on. You already need to own 2 properties before you'll start getting eligible to access financing through that channel. But in short, it literally just comes down to repayment ability. If you've got a salary that's sufficient to allow for the payment of your existing bond and you buy a secondary property for rental purposes, that's perfect. Because you need to, before that rental income even hits your account, be able to cover that bond installment, first and foremost. Later on, as the rental comes into your account, it will also help with your further affordability for the next properties. But if you want to start building a proper legacy, if you want to really start building a portfolio, it's best to also chat to your team members, TJ, about setting up a structure, putting it into an entity structure where you can really take it to the next level. Because you're going to run out of financing steam in your personal capacity and much faster than what you would if you make use of an entity structure, be it a company with shareholding in a trust or a trust.
I do agree, Christian, with you when you're talking about structures there. And I think this is also a little bit of a foreign concept for a lot of people. But why would you recommend a structure when you're buying property investments? And for a lot of people, I think even the name structure would confuse someone. Like, what do you mean I need to buy my properties in a structure? So for someone else who is always looking for money for people at the different banks, when you're talking about a structure, what do you mean? What are the types of structures that are out there where I can buy my properties for investments in?
Yeah, so there's 2 structures that will typically be made use of. either a company with
Right.
shareholding in a trust, or just a company with shareholding in personal capacity, but a company as one of the structures, and the other one is a trust. So the whole decision making around how you put together that structure needs to be done under the guidance of a tax specialist. So everybody's circumstances change and differ. But the bottom line comes down to making sure that you've got a sustainable financing solution. And that's exactly where the structures come in, because your personal bond affordability in your personal capacity will be lowered by every single bond and obligation that you take out in your personal name. So if you qualify for R1 million and you buy a property to the value of 400,000 and it's in your personal name, that will show on your credit score, and that obligation will be discounted by all of the banks, meaning that across the board you'll have access to another 600,000. So if you buy another 300,000 rand properties, that's where your property journey technically stops until you've got enough rental income coming in to add for further affordability. Now, if you do exactly that same exercise in an entity structure, the bank where that bond is granted will be the only one that has full visibility of that exposure. So it's tied to a suretyship. So it's based on your affordability, but if you then, for example, take out that 400,000 at Bank A, Bank B, C, and D will not see it. So technically, you've still got access to that million. So if you go completely crazy with this, you can overexpose yourself and you can put yourself in a lot of risk, because if it implodes, it's going to implode beautifully and you are going to be completely down on the dumps, financially speaking. But if you take care of that entity structure and you take care of your own affordability, you can really take yourself to the next level. I mean, I've got a good example of one of my clients who qualifies for 3.3 million. His total bond exposure is 11 million in his entity structure already. So that's massive. And that's just fast tracks his whole process to getting himself financially free through property investment.
So, Christian, I want to dive into that conversation of the structure. I remember back in the days when I was starting to invest in property, I didn't understand what structures were. So I just went and started investing, in my personal name, right? Was that wrong? No. At the time, it wasn't, But as life started getting a little bit complicated, and for me, started to understanding my end goal on what I wanted to do, I then realized that, hold on, as an individual, I only have access to 30% of my total earnings to be allowed to buy property. So I've got a cap, I've got a ceiling there. But my dream was to buy more. So how do I do that? There's another vehicle here, another structure, which is a company. A company is designed in its nature to borrow as much money as it can. Right? There's companies that have billions of billions in debt, right? But why is the company there? It's to create jobs. The government is very happy when you're doing that. They give you so many incentives when you're doing that. So if you're doing the same things, but with a different structure, there is different rules. And when you are playing in the game, you also need to abide by the different set of rules that they are. And for me, then I started now understanding, okay, so when you got a company, this is what you need to do. But then I realized, oops, I do need a trust. Why? Because I needed some protection, I needed some continuity, I needed to have some tax savings and all of those nice things, right? But after a couple of years, then I realized, one trust doesn't help. I now need two, because now I'm mitigating another risk, isn't it? And now I recently discovered two actually don't work. I need a third one, but the third one is for A, B, C, D. Now here is someone who is listening to this video here today, Christian. Then they say, TJ, he's got 3 trusts. I now need to go and get 3 trusts with a company. Is that the right approach of creating the structure?
No. So it's never a copy and paste approach. You need to look at it as baby steps. So you're going to crawl before you start walking, before you start running. And as that progresses, as your whole setup in terms of partnerships, in terms of types of properties, in terms of number of properties, as that progresses, you will see certain tweaks being necessitated to your structure. So plain straightforward, from a starting point, get a company, put that shareholding in a trust. Then you're covered, because those properties in the company will never form part of your personal estate, so it keeps you safe. But similarly, so if you're going to do a quick flip of a property and you don't have any properties in your personal name, you've got a capital gains tax exemption. So you can do a flip in personal name whilst buying properties in the company name. It just comes down to your bond affordability, firstly, and then secondly, what your own tax structuring and own planning allows for. And I've got a client with quite a couple of kids. He does all of his investments directly through a trust. The interest rate of a trust is 45% from Rand 1, where a company is on 28%. But you've got the conduit principle that allows you to distribute pre-tax income to the beneficiaries. So his kids are all registered for income tax. They're not earning a salary, but they're daddy's little tax breaks. So it literally comes down to how your own setup puts everything together for you.
So I think the bottom line here, Christian, is that once you start going into the journey of property investments, and especially if you're looking for funding for it, the bottom line is that start wherever you are, and then start learning or understanding the different structures that there are, or vehicles that there are out there. And once you are implementing whatever you're implementing, buying properties, 1, 2, 3 beds, a house, a building, whatever the case is, then explore all of these other opportunities that are there with the professionals that will be able to give you the right direction. And where you are today could be totally different from where you are in 3 years' time or in 5 years' time. But now, Christian, once we are in that space of you're now getting funding and you are the surety holder, and the debt is not sitting on you, it's sitting in the company, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. So for that reason, that 30% cap that we're talking about, to say that from a National Credit Act, your 30% is the ceiling for everybody, whether you're a CEO or a janitor or a cleaner, whatever it is, it applies for everyone. But in this case, it's no longer applicable because the debt is in a company and the company doesn't have a ceiling, right?
Well, there is still a semblance of that affordability being considered, but
Sure.
the lines start blurring a bit because the company will start creating its own repayment history and its own track record. Well, once you get to your first year's financial statements, and especially after your second year's financial statements, you're in a position where you can show to the banks, but listen, I signed surety for these deals, but just look at it. The company is paying all of it on my behalf. I don't even have to contribute a cent from my side. And that's where you want to get, because at that point, your affordability is technically opened up again. And that's where that client of mine has been able to almost go to 3 times his affordability ceiling. And the joke of it all is all of those bonds are split between 2 banks.
Wow.
So he still has other bank affordability and credibility available to him. So it literally just comes down to firstly being patient, and then secondly making sure that you buy the right properties.
Right. So in a nutshell, getting property funding for your property investment, it's an easy game. If we are to look at the previous videos that we have done on the process of the step-by-step guide of buying a property, the steps are the same. So number one, obviously you need to have your credit score in a good space. That's the first one. The second one is that obviously there is paperwork that you need to fill in and give to Christian. The third one is that if your credit score is great, you're going to get more funding, right? The fourth one is that now when Christian has come back to you with funding, or should I say with offers from the different banks, you can now choose to say, well, I'm going to take this one based on what makes you happy or what ticks that particular deal that we are talking about. And if you then choose the bank, how can we help you? Instead of together for tomorrow forever, it's really up to you. But the bottom line is that now you have property number one in your asset, in your company, in your structure, in your vehicle. And now it's all about making sure that you are obviously repaying the bank. Whereas you're repaying the bank, you might actually find property number two, and you can repeat the same process. And you have just heard Christian there speaking to the fact that one of his clients, he wasn't talking about me. I don't do things in trusts. I do things in companies. I like the 28% versus the 45%. But that's a conversation for another day. But the bottom line is anyone, you, me, Christian, everybody, we can start now doing this repeat cycle over and over. But the beauty of it, remember, this is a property investment. The beauty of it is someone else is paying off your debt. And that's why I love funding. I call it other people's money. Ne, isn't that so, Christian?
That's correct. And TJ, tongue in cheek, you'll move over to a trust structure if you add another 3 kids into the mix.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think my wife allows for 3 kids. I might just be getting a second wife on a high approval. Maybe I might get there. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to conclude it for here, but we will check you out on the next video. But don't forget to add your comments on the bottom if you have found this beneficial or you'd like us to expand on any topic what we have spoken about, what we spoke about in this video. We'll check you out on the next video.